Good morning, my name is Jessica. I'm the Social Impact Officer at Lotterywest and I'll be one of your speakers today. This webinar will include a brief history of the grant management tool, as well as instruction on how to use each of the three reporting requirements. The first being requesting a payment and sharing progress, the second, request a change or extension, and the third, complete a final acquittal declaration. I'll now introduce the team that will be presenting this webinar. So I've got Craig Goodson from the finance team and Lee Gramas from finance. And the rest of the grants finance team you'll be mainly dealing with is Winnie Lau and Nish Kumar. Before we start, I wanted to do an acknowledgement of country. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, the Whadjuk Noongar people, as well as the traditional owners of the lands in which our participants are engaging with the webinar today. I'm grateful for their caretaking of the animals, sea, sky and waterways in which this beautiful place I live. I would continue to educate myself and express respect and support for their evolving culture, including acknowledgement of their leaders, past and present. So we'll go to the PowerPoint now. Yeah. So before we start this webinar, I'd like to do some housekeeping. Your microphone and cameras are switched off, so we cannot see you. Don't worry, if you don't catch all the content or images, this session will be recorded and shared with you. We're really keen to hear your questions, so please post them and we'll respond with common themes. So your question bar should be in the right-hand side of your screen there. Please use the question box if you have any questions you'd like to be considered for the Q&A session at the end of this session. We will not be publishing questions. This means you will not see other people's questions, but we do ask that if you have any specific questions regarding reporting requirements or grant ideas, that you discuss these either with the team at Lotterywest through the email grants@lotterywest.wa.gov.au or give us a call on 133 777. And just jumping into a bit of background about Lotterywest and what we do. We're the only lottery in the nation and one of the few in the world where our profits are returned back to the community. Since the 1930s, we've supported local and community initiatives, providing benefit to all Western Australians. The Lotteries Commission was established at the height of Depression with the aim of keeping money within Western Australia to address community hardship. We pride ourselves on working with communities and sectors that support those in need, amplify local strengths and opportunities, as well as build better and more connected communities. We do this through providing one-off time-limited grants. Now, getting into why we created the grant management tool. So if you see GMT, that relates to the grant management tool. So we created it to simplify and streamline reporting and grants administration for grant customers. We wanted to create a one-stop shop for customers in the post-approval space and simplify their reporting. This will supersede all the progress reporting that we've had to date. We also wanted to gather aggregable information from grant outcomes, learnings and achievements to share with other people. This complied with best practice for management and distribution of government money. This outcomes reporting is a really important part in understanding the impact of government funding, and capturing this information helps us learn and make informed decisions regarding where and how to distribute money. Digitising the process through this online form has enabled better and more efficient storage of your information. It helps us report on grant claims, progress reports and outcomes easily. So I'm going to hand over to Craig Goodson now, who will speak to you about the what.
Good morning. What is the grant management tool and what can it do for me? The tool is an instrument that simplifies your management of the grant from approval to the final acquittal stages. As just previously mentioned, it can be used for three main functions, and that is to request a payment and to share progress, to request a change or an extension to your grant, or to complete a final grant acquittal declaration. Some grant customers have payment conditions outlined in their grant approval schedule. In this instance, the tool can be used to request a payment and to share progress. The tool can also be used at any time during the life of the grant to request a change to your approved grant or to request an extension of your acquittal date. All grants approved from April 2020 onwards must be acquitted using the tool. The tool incorporates outcomes reporting and final financial acquittal of the grant and includes an income and expenditure statement for the grant that is mandatory in order to acquit the grant. Previously, I spoke about the grant approval schedule. This slide shows an example of the grant approval schedule, and it is for an unconditional advance. This means that payments are made automatically within 10 working days of your grant being approved. You'll notice in the example that at the top it includes your organisation name and organisation number, and importantly your application number. This application number needs to be used in the grant management tool so we can identify which grant it applies to. It also gives you the grant development officer's name, which is your assessor. So if you do have any issues with the grant, you can contact the assessor. Below that, it gives you the details of the grant, and in this instance, it's the total amount granted was 34,217 and the date of the grant. Below that, the grant purpose is actually the approved purpose of the grant. So that is what you need to use the grant for. In the tabular section, you'll see it says overall conditions of the grant that must be met before payment can be made. And in this case, it's unconditional, so there are no conditions. But below that is the overall accountability requirements that are applicable to the approved grant. And this tells you that the time frame is 12 months and that that to acquit the grant you must use the grant management tool. On the left, you'll see the orange arrow saying expense type, and in this case, it's property improvements or fixtures, and it's towards the cost associated with improvements to the hall. This is important for your completion of grants management tool. The arrow at the bottom says payment conditions, and obviously in this case, it's not applicable because it's an unconditional advance. To the right of that arrow, it gives you, again, it says you need to acquit using the grant management tool. Most grants are paid in advance, but for various reasons, some are paid in arrears, which means that you spend the money first and then claim from Lotterywest what you've spent. But this will have been discussed with you during the assessment of the grant by your grants development officer. Moving on to the second example, this is very similar, except it's a conditional advance. And it simply is more complex and requires conditions to be met before the funds are released. And also there could be conditions to be met during part payments and during the life of the grant. Again, the grant purpose or the approved purpose is outlined, and in this case it's up to $348,774 towards 12-month time limited salaries. And in the tabular section, you'll notice that the prepayment condition is the development of a grant acknowledgement agreement as agreed during the grant development. So in this case, you would complete your grant acknowledgement agreement and then make a claim using the grants management tool. If you notice at the bottom orange arrow, it says payment condition, and during the life of the grant, we would once you've claimed after the grant acknowledgement agreement, the first 174,000, you would then acquit at least 75% of that, and then you can claim the next 174,000. Moving on to the next slide. This slide details what sort of information you'll be expected to provide through the grants management tool and through the life of your grant. So we basically encourage you to keep track of the information that is detailed here. So there's five areas that we concentrate on, and that's inputs, activity, outputs, outcomes, and impact. Now for inputs, we're talking about income received from Lotterywest and any other funders, any in-kind support that you might provide, and importantly, the number and location of volunteers. For activities, we need you to record we need you to keep a record of expenditure items and proof of payments for claims and final acquittal. Now, an example of this would be a tax invoice, and the evidence of payment would be suppliers' receipts or $0 invoices or extracts of bank statements. For outputs, we would need you to tell us what the grant activity achieved and the number and the location of any beneficiaries to the grant. For outcomes, we'd like you to give us stories of change as a result of the grant. An example would be how the grant has changed the lives of individuals or the community that benefit from the grant. We'd also like to know how you measured the change, how you actually understand how that change was created. And for impacts of the grant, we need to know the success factors and learnings so that we can be informed and you can be informed of future impactful grant making. In some cases, obviously, the grant doesn't achieve what was the intended impact, but we'd like to hear about this too so we can improve it in the future. And that's all from me. I'm going to hand over to Lee now.
Thanks very much, Craig, and good morning, everybody. Just while we set up the demonstration of the actual tool itself, we're really going to now jump into the tool to have a look around how it works and hopefully demystify the process for you so that you can use it with confidence. We are now at the tool itself. This is the front page, and it really is a fairly simple form that you would be quite familiar with, presumably in the work that you do more broadly, and it is similar to other documents that you might have seen from Lotterywest. So the first page, really very simply, is a bit of a reminder of what the tool is about. Some helpful reminders also about the types of documents that you might wish to have on hand when you're actually using it. And always useful to have these documents because you'll see us often referring to things like the grant approval schedule because that's actually the approved grant and the detail of what the grant is for. And obviously there'll be information in here about who you are, your grant application number, and who the best contact person is for us to talk to in relation to the documentation that you send through. And finally, of course, the front page also takes you through to the 3 options that you can use the grant for. You can certainly use it for requesting a payment and sharing progress. You can also use it to request a change, and you simply press the button that allows you to go to the next section, or you can use it to complete a final acquittal of the grant. You'll also see on this tool fairly standard navigation buttons, so next, etc., that will take you through the actual document, and it will also allow you to save at any point and exit at any point so that you can go back to it whilst you're completing what you're doing. So why don't we use this opportunity to have a little play and have a look to see how it actually works. So the first option we might use is the request a payment and share progress. Just move my way around the screen a little bit easier. Sorry, as always, there's always a little bit of a technical problem. Okay. Just bear with us. This is new for Lotterywest, and this is the first time we've tried to actually use it live via a webinar. And I'm just plugging in a mouse because that's hopefully will work a little bit better. She says with great expectations. There we go. I've found an alternative way of making it work. Sorry about that. It got a little bit stuck. But essentially, once you've actually chosen that option, you will be taken to a screen. And as you can see, the screen gives you a couple of different ways that you can answer that question. And when it comes to payments, we always ask whether or not there's been a payment beforehand for this grant, because as Craig mentioned earlier, some grants are paid fully in advance, and in fact the majority of grants these days are paid fully in advance, but some grants might include a couple of different payments along the way, so there's an opportunity for you to choose whichever way your grant has been structured. So for example, if I press the yes button that I have had previous grants, that would give me some alternative pathways. However, if I chose no, because in this case we'll assume the simplest grant, and that is the grant that is fully paid out in advance, that then gives us the next option to go down. As you can see, when we're ready to actually request a payment, it then asks us a couple of key things. One is whether or not the grant is in advance or in arrears. Again, this information will be included in your grant approval schedule. And essentially that simply tells us how your grant is to be paid. Advance simply means it's going to be paid before you've incurred the costs, and in arrears after you've incurred. So this is an area, if you choose, again, we'll go the simplest route, and that's the advance option. Then that takes you further down into the document, which asks, in this case, whether or not prepayment conditions have been met. Now, this is a fairly important part of the process in that we seek to make sure that grants any outstanding conditions that hopefully and should have been discussed with you during the assessment process. Again, that you've got an opportunity to meet that before the grant's paid out. You can talk to that here because there's information that you can provide, or you can attach a document. And you'll see that quite commonly throughout the tool, that you can actually obviously write in your own words what's happened, but importantly, there's also an opportunity for you to attach documents throughout, because obviously we want you to have an easier process as possible. And there's always little helpful tips throughout the tool. In this case, there's a little reminder that there might be a delay if you haven't met your prepayment condition. Now, if this grant was a progress payment, we would then also take you through and ask you about, I'll give you the opportunity to acquit your previous payment and also to report on outcomes of that previous claim. So bear in mind, as I said, this is a conditional logic form, so it'll actually take you down various pathways depending upon the answer that you give. Again, assuming a simpler one for the purposes of the demonstration, in this case, we will simply go to requesting the amount that you've asked for. This will be the amount of the grant that you're seeking to request on this occasion. There's an opportunity for you to identify the types of expense items that you're claiming, and also in your own words describe the grant itself. If there's more than one expense item, so for example the previous example that Craig gave of the ABC Corporation, there were a couple of different components, so you might detail those there. And as you can see, it actually flows down, and like all good forms will hopefully give you a total amount as you go. And of course, a little reminder there that it should all balance, which is the whole idea, of course. So in this case, because it is a simple example of a simple advanced grant, that's all you'll need to do. It will then flow through to the declaration part of the document, which is a really key part for us, because one of the things that we need to know, that when you are claiming a grant, is that the right person in the organisation has actually asked for it to be paid, and therefore we have devised this whole section at the back that allows you to make that declaration. That's what the grant is going to be used for. There's an opportunity for you to either sign the document using your mouse, or alternatively you can attach and upload a signature as well. There's obviously some more details about the organisation there, and you'll notice that there's a couple of options for signatures there. That's because some organisations require 2 signatories, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. So that's the end of the first section. So at this point, you can either save and exit, you can go back and repeat it, add some further information, or alternatively submit the document. Once it's submitted, a copy obviously comes to us, and we'll be in touch in terms of processing whatever it is that you've asked for, or alternatively, we'll still be in touch. And the other thing here is that a copy also goes to the person that you've nominated at the front end of the document as your contact person, so you will have a copy of the document. So hopefully that's reassured you that it is a fairly simple document to use, and really is a new thing for Lotterywest that we're hoping to now, in fact, are using in all of our grants from April, so that we can not only digitise the process, make it easier for you, but also have a fairly standard way of communicating with grant customers. So I'll just go to the back of the demonstration and quickly go through a couple of other options. So having sought a payment of your grant, you might also choose at some point during your relationship with Lotterywest to request a change or an extension. So that simply means that you want to change something about your grant, whether it be the items that have been approved, request a new grant item that you hadn't foreseen at the time of the grant was applied for, or you want to change the conditions that are related to the grant. We know that after a grant is approved, things do change, now more than ever, really. So we always encourage you to talk to us before you change the way you use the grant. You can do one or other, and in fact, if you choose to use the Change My Grant option, it will actually take you down to giving you an opportunity to explain what that is, what the change is that you're seeking, and also just confirms with you again how much time you might need to acquit the grant. And we always encourage you to use as much time as you need. We're always very encouraging that you use a fairly conservative approach there, so that you give yourself enough time that you can actually do the work that you need to do in the community and acquit the grant. There's an opportunity here again to attach supporting documents, and often people will attach budgets or quotes or those types of things here, because that's what they want to change. And we also seek at this point for you to confirm that none of the organisational details that you've supplied as part of the original grant have changed. So you would simply say no if they haven't, and if you say yes, then we would hope that you would attach a copy of that as part of this process. And once you've done that, it should take you through. As always, we give you a little bit of extra opportunity to put some more information in. Assuming that you put everything in that you need, this should now take you through to the declaration. And it's the same declaration that we use for all three options. Okay, so just finally, just go back to the front of the document. So I'm trying to use a quicker way of doing it, and it's not letting me. So we might go the old slow way. As you can see, really easy to navigate. It's backwards and forwards the whole way. And at any point you can save and exit. So if you go back to the front of the document, you can now choose to complete a final grant acquittal. Now, every grant since April will need to complete one of these. And in fact, some people have chosen to use it for grants that predate April, which has been really quite interesting, because I think they've found it as hopefully an easy process to use. So in this case, completing a final grant acquittal allows you to report on both financial and outcomes of your grant. The financial information will be reviewed by us in the grants finance team, and the outcomes information is used to gain a better understanding of the impact of Lotterywest funding in Western Australia. Importantly, and what is new about this process, is that together this information acquits the grant. So you need both parts of this information to finalise the actual grant. So if you then go into this section, the first part will ask you about all the funding, all the income that's been associated with this grant. You'll obviously put the Lotterywest amount in here. I think it might be live, so we'll just try that. I should have chosen one of these options first. So in the case of the ABC Corporation, they had project costs. So if you put that information in there and say put in salaries or some of the other information, etc., you can then put in the amount. So in this case, it might be $1,000. Never mind, it seems to have gone forward a little bit too quickly for me. But essentially, you get the idea that you can basically report on all the various elements of the grant that was approved, and again detailed in the grant approval schedule. You would simply detail that information in there, and if you scroll further down, it has actually added up the amount in the total there. So the form is clever enough to be able to add up some numbers for you, so you don't have to worry about that. You can also attach information, and importantly, with an acquittal document, or with an acquittal of a grant, sorry, you will need to also attach an income expenditure statement where you can actually attach it here. And there is an example that you can see linked to the document right here. We also have examples on the website. In some cases, particularly for grants that require some additional evidence of how the expenditures has incurred, we'd like to see the actual information itself around invoices and evidence of payment. So this is a place where you can actually include that information. And as you can see, sometimes you might actually have lots of information to include here. So you would simply press the I have more attachments to upload and you get some more options. So once you've done that, you will then move through to the grant activities. I'm sorry, I might just pop back. I seem to have, and this is the beauty of a form that is still evolving, but even those of us that use it every day find there's a little bit of information that's different. I'll just go back a couple of pages because I think I forgot to include something. There's the expenditure there. So once you've done the income part, you then go into expenses, which I've already talked about. And once you've provided the evidence of how the grant has been spent, you've basically completed the acquittal part, the financial acquittal part of the process. We're now going to talk briefly about the reporting on grant activities, and as you can see here, there's an opportunity for you to describe the various activities that have been undertaken as part of the project, where those activities occurred, and in what locations. We also want to know about the volunteers that were involved in the project, and where, and similarly with beneficiaries, i.e. those people that were actually benefited by and had an impact of the grant. And of course, really important these days that we talk about outcomes and what difference the grant has made. So there's an opportunity for you to describe what that is. There's also an opportunity for you to link the grant with the Lotterywest Community Investment Framework, and it's simply a drop-down field that you need to choose. And any additional information that you care to provide. It really is up to you how much information you provide. You can be as effusive as you want to be, and of course you might also have some other documentation that you can attach to the acquittal rather than retyping everything. We're obviously also keen to know that whether the grant was part of the COVID-19 Relief Fund, and if your grant was approved since April, it should be. And if it is, so for example, you might choose the yes button. If it is, then there will actually be the various choices that relate to the COVID-19 relief grants. And finally, we're really, really keen to understand and hear from you about learnings, because this is an important part of the feedback loop to Lotterywest, what successes you've experienced, and how you wish to change anything that you might do again, and of course what next in terms of your grant. In some cases this will be the end of it, in other cases the grant has gone on to achieve other new things, including possibly coming back to Lotterywest for further funding. We're also keen to understand how your grant aligns with good practice, and these are the key areas that Lotterywest is keen to hear about. And importantly, we also encourage people to tell us about how they acknowledge the Lotterywest grant, and in this case, again, we give you some options in terms of drop down. Once you've completed that, hopefully that was a yes. There's an opportunity also to provide additional documents, which again you can attach and upload to the document, to the tool itself. So presuming you've done all of that and you're ready to submit the, or to sign and submit the document, we simply need you to tick that little box there and move through to the declaration document itself. And that's it. So hopefully that demonstration gives you some encouragement to explore the document in your own time. It's available, as I said, on the website. It's available via the link in your grant approval schedule and approval letter. But at any time, please do give us a call, because we really want you to find this experience as seamless as possible. Thank you. I'll just hand back to Jess, who will work through some tips and tricks. So we'll go back to the PowerPoint presentation.
Hi guys, we're just getting the tips and tricks slide ready for you. So we've called this slide tips and tricks. It's not a workaround for the form, but it's just some things that we've learned in creating this form and using this form this last couple of months that we wanted to share with you. So I'll jump straight into the slide here. So the first being is, and I know we've talked about it a lot, is keep your documents on hand. So we do have a reminder in the first page of the GMT, but please have them on hand, available for when you're filling out the form. It will really help you. Also, please use your correct number for the GMT, which is your application number. So this is what we use to reference your application internally. So when your GMT submission comes back to us, we actually go and match it with what we have on file. So it really helps us if you have the correct number. Also, just as an FYI, the email addresses provided in the GMT will receive a PDF copy of the form. So just keep that in mind. And also, just in the creation of the form, we use conditional logic, which means, as you saw Lee demonstrate, what you select to one question will lead you down a different path. We've built it this way because we have a lot of customers with varying needs, and we wanted to ensure that we were able to manage all your expectations and manage your grants appropriately. So if you do get stuck in a section that you don't think is correct, just use the back button, which is at the bottom of your screen, not the back button inside your web browser, but the back button on the form itself, and go back to a question which you think you might have selected the wrong answer to. And once again, if you're unsure about the legal signatories or the references to legal signatories throughout the GMT, please give us a call on 133 777 before submitting, just so we can chat through your concerns. All right. Another thing that we thought would be helpful is just to talk you through how to save your progress and resume the GMT. So the GMT has a really great function where you don't have to complete it in one sitting. What you can do is you can save and exit at the bottom of the form, and when that comes up for the first time, you enter your email address. Your email address will be used, they'll send a link to it basically, and you'll be able to re-access the GMT at a later date. Please ensure you check your spam and your junk mail, as the link might have gone there. This is a really handy tool as well for sharing the form or the tool with other people. So you can use this link by forwarding the email and sending it on to your legal signatory or someone who is in your finance department. So you can really share the answering of the form with other people, or the tool, sorry. Please note though that only one person can use the form at any one time, and this is just a version control. So I'm going to hand over to Lee now, and she'll talk you through what it means about the declaration of the legal signatories that we've talked about, and she'll just explain it in a bit more detail. Thanks, Lee.
Yeah, thanks, Jess. Yes, it's really important that we do have the legally enabled person to sign off on the GMT, and it actually then gives us the instruction to actually follow through with what you've asked for. So the GMT declaration, which you would have seen in the last page that I demonstrated earlier, must be signed by the person or persons who are legally able to enter into contracts on behalf of the organisation. If by law your organisation requires more than one signatory for such an authorisation, then 2 signatories must be provided. And you saw that there were a couple of options for you. In the GMT, we've actually listed the various organisation types and who would normally be your signatories. So in the case of an incorporated association, it would normally be the chairperson or president. For a local government authority, that would be the CEO. For an Aboriginal corporation, the legal signatory is usually 2 directors, and hence it's a place for you to be able to put 2 signatures in the document. And for not-for-profit companies or trusts, the legal signatory is generally 2 directors or a director and a company secretary. So this information is usually outlined in your constitution, your rules or equivalent documents. So this will usually set this out. So please check those documents. But as Jess said, if you're unsure, give us a call, because we've actually got the current list, if you like, of who we can accept signatories from. In some cases, organisations also choose to give responsibilities for signing the Lotterywest document to someone else. This is called a delegation. Now, you will simply need to fill in a delegated signing authority form, which is available on our website, and then that person also can be part of the process of signing off on the GMT. Best to organise that beforehand, if at all possible, because it's a slightly separate process and we want to put that in place before you actually go ahead and use that new signatory. So just rounding off the presentation with some information about resources, and I think we have referred to these throughout the presentation. On the Lotterywest website, there is a section called Payment Reporting and Evaluation. I think it's a section called Working with Lotterywest. On there are the 3 key tools associated with the grants management tool, an example of the grant management tool itself, which you can go into, explore, play with. It really is only an example and allows you to test and look at those different pathways that we talked about. Importantly, also it allows you to actually look at the information that you need to be collecting before and during the project. So it allows you to think about that before you actually get started. Once you're ready to actually use the tool, either for a payment, a change or an acquittal, you can use a live copy of the grant management tool, which is available on the website, and it's also linked to your grant approval letter, which you now receive digitally, so you should have that link ready to go. And it has there is also a copy of the example income and expenditure statement. So the 3 key parts of what you need to use. So I'll just hand back to Jess now to talk to you a little bit more about measuring impact.
Hi guys. So we've got some resources here as well for measuring the outcomes of your grant. So some Lotterywest grant customers may be required to undertake an evaluation of their grant. Other people might just be interested in understanding what outcomes their grant has enabled. We're really excited about that and we're here to help. So we've got a couple of links available here. So we've got the UTS Social Impact Toolbox, which has a theory of change template, a logic model explainer, a logic model worksheet, an evaluation framework explainer, and evaluation framework worksheets. If you don't know what any of these things mean, please give us a call and we'll chat through them. And we've also got the University WA, we've got a link here to a report which gives you a bit of a starter foundational knowledge of outcomes. We've also got the OECD Measuring Wellbeing and Progress access to that. So that's got some research which gives you analysis and also a bit of research about developing metrics for outcome measurement, as well as a bit of reading, a bit of understanding what's out there at the moment. All very exciting. But now we're going to pop into the Q&As where we just got a few questions that have come through today. And I'm going to hand over to Craig with the first one.
Okay, the one question that I've received is, what do I do if my grant was approved last year and there's no mention of the grants management tool? In this case, you can still make use of the grant management tool. You just go onto our website and access it. But you will need to look at the grant approval schedule and ensure that those conditions are met too. So, as an example, if your grant approval schedule says that you need to provide invoices and evidence of payment, you use the grants management tool and you attach the invoices and evidence of payment. Another question that I've received is that there are, my organisation has multiple outputs, and for each output there are numerous costs. How do we report on these? My suggestion in this case would be to insert the totals of the cost in the grants management tool under the expense types, and then I would provide the detail in the expenditure section of the income and expenditure statement. The income and expenditure statements obviously can be manipulated or changed to suit your different requirements. We do give examples, but you can change it to suit your own requirements. So as much information as you can put in that would be beneficial for us. I'll now hand over to Jess. I know she's received some questions.
Yeah. So the first one I have is do you have a PDF copy of the acquittal form? So the GMT. So no, we don't have one, and that's just because of the conditional logic in which we've built the form. So depending on your journey, you will receive different bits of information, and so to create a PDF version of that would be extremely long and probably not pertinent to a lot of people. So the GMT with the 3 options that you choose is actually still one form. So a PDF form would be quite long considering all the different components. But we do have that example on our website, so you're free to go in and play and see the journey, and that has all the questions that you'll have in the actual live form. So use the example only form to get an idea of the content and the questions. And yeah, you're free to go in that as much as you like and have a look at how that works as well. The second question I have is, will a copy of the PowerPoint slides, tips and tricks be sent out after the webinar? Yes, we can send them out. So we may have these on the website, or we can send them directly to you because we've got all your contact details. Thank you for RSVPing. So we can make those available to you. Thank you for being interested.
And if anybody does want to discuss, as we mentioned earlier, anything in particular related to their particular circumstances, just give us a call or send through your query via email, and we'll respond to them directly related to your particular grant.
All right, guys. So we've come to the conclusion of our webinar. Thank you so much for attending. Hopefully you learnt a few things. And like we said the whole way through, please give us a call if you've got any questions. This tool will be our tool going forward. We've already seen a lot of people use it, so we're really happy to see that it's been welcomed by you all, and we hope to continue chatting with you and seeing your lovely stories come through. So thank you for attending, and we'll chat again soon.